When you're faced with a challenge, don't focus on the problem, focus on the outcome you want to create. There's a big difference, and the distinction is one of the most important things I've learned as a facilitator, and the reasons why come from physics and psychology. When you focus on the problem, you empower the problem. But when you focus on the outcome you want to create, you empower the solution. First, let's acknowledge most of us are really good at seeing the problem. In fact, our brain has 7 times more architecture to look for what's wrong than what's right. A lot of us see a problem and we tackle the problem. However, there's a better way. The formula for successfully taking on challenges starts by focusing on the outcome that you want to create, and it requires us to identify 2 things. The team's ambitions, those are the outcomes that we want, and our constraints. That is, the reality that is constraining our challenge. And the magic happens when you marry the ambition and the constraint together in your design statement. And here's the model. How can I accomplish X ambition despite Y constraint? And what is this magic I speak of? It's tension. The question, how can we accomplish X ambition despite Y constraint, will help to generate a tension with yourself and with your team that is inclined to seek solutions, and it points the tension in the direction of supporting your solutions rather than reverting back to the old ways of working. Let me say this again. Having both the ambition and the constraint in the same design statement creates a tension that makes you want to solve for the challenge, but more importantly, it creates a tension that welcomes the solution rather than pulling in the direction of what was done before. Let's understand why, but before we do, be sure to stick around to the end for the super important point that teams need to avoid in order to solve challenges together. But why shouldn't you just focus on the problem? From a physics perspective, energy follows the path of least resistance. This means where tension exists, that tension is going to want to resolve itself. Tension always seeks resolution. Almost everything is being pushed or pulled to get to a state of homeostasis. When you focus on the problem, your work is contained within the structure of the existing problem. The structure of the problem doesn't care about your solution. It craves homeostasis. So when you introduce a new solution, the tension will be to pull in the direction of the previous solution, not the new one. It's going to render a situation similar to the previous one. So before you know it, you're trying to solve the same problem in a different way all over again. And all you do is continually bang your head against the wall trying to solve the problem in an oscillating cycle. You can't solve problems this way. When you're taking on challenges, there are only 2 types of structures. Those that advance what you're trying to do and those that oscillate. To get into an advancing structure, you want to create a new structure. Because when you do, you create a path of least resistance, and the tension motivates us to want to solve for the challenge. You do this by shifting your attention from what you were trying to avoid to what you were trying to bring into reality, because energy follows attention. And what do I mean by that? Solving a problem is trying to eliminate something, but creating the outcome you want is bringing something new into existence. How about some examples? The design group Eat Big Fish calls design questions structured with both the ambition and the constraint propelling questions, because they literally propel you to want to solve for the challenge. And I particularly like the example they give. Audi wanted to win the 24-hour Le Mans race in France, and their chief engineer, instead of asking, how might we build a faster car, said, how can we win the 24-hour Le Mans if our car can go no faster than anyone else's? And they discovered that the way to do this was to pit less than everyone else. So the team worked on fuel efficiency, and for the first time they put a diesel technology in the car, and the car won the next 3 years. Your team might not be selling tickets. Instead of how can we sell more tickets, your ambition might be to increase revenue or to increase attendance at Friday night's game. Your design statement might look like, how can we increase revenue for Friday night's game despite 2 other events in town that night? Or for nonprofits, how can we fundraise despite declined attendance at the gala? You see, that's a much different question than how can we fix our gala attendance? Or how do we sell more tickets? Now when you start, you might only have your ambition, and that's okay. That's better than focusing on the problem. The fastest way to use this method is to start with a design question that begins, how can we accomplish X? And then you can add your constraint as you learn more insights. And from there you can reframe using different lenses and experiments. If you look at the innovation adoption lifecycle, only 2.5% of the population are innovators because the easiest thing to do is to avoid tension. But when your belief and your desire, your constraints and your ambitions are related, it's difficult to avoid tension. Here is the super important part for teams. Be sure not to lessen the ambition to meet your constraints. Teams are tempted to do this, but when they do, it weakens the tension. It weakens the desire to solve the challenge. Set high ambitions for your team. It will help them solve the challenge. When you want to take on a challenge, don't just look at the problem. You don't want to skip the step of identifying your ambition and your constraint if you truly want to make progress. Now that you know this, do me a favor, y'all. Go win the day. Sincerely, your #1 sidekick.